for giving this opportunity to both Manpreet and I. And I hope all our students they learn from this. They provide us honest feedback so that we can improve our trainings, our offerings, and generate more value and benefits for all the students. The disclaimer and the rules, although most people ignore it, but there have been recent trends in which some of the videos from some channels or the excerpts from some of the books, they were called out as the copyright infringement. So the first thing is all the references and the content, it's for educational purposes only. What we want to do is to learn from the different stories, what all has been written, or movies or series, all such stuff. To avoid any unnecessary interruption and controversies, we stay away from religious texts. Whenever there is a reference, it is just as an example to showcase that okay, these were some of the ancient books or stories that were used and what was the purpose. Uh, Practice your trade every day and submit your assignments. The assignments are very simple. Although we will be covering the writing routines in week 2 or week 3, but still, I would request you to take 15 to 30 minutes of your time every day and practice whatever kind of stories you'd like to write. We want to create a very open and a safe environment. So the reason I highlight this is let's be respectful to our fellow participants. There will be a lot of discussion around new ideas. It's our responsibility that as a learning community, we appreciate the new ideas, we acknowledge the differences, and together we combine something new. Most of the study material and assignments that I'll be sharing, they're either from LibriVox, YouTube, or the assignments or the text will be from Gutenberg Press, which means it's copyright free. If and ever there is any challenge related to copyright, uh, anybody who's listening who feels that we have used their proprietary material, please let us know and I'll work with the Digital Nalanda team to remove the requested or the required content. The workshop will be conducted in English. However, we do have some sessions in which we will be talking about regional languages, and we would actually learn a lot from each other in terms of regional languages. So it will be a good mix, but the primary language for this workshop is English. Participate in all discussions. You have questions, something is not clear, and especially when you have a different point of view, especially when you don't agree with me, especially if you feel I am misstating something, stop me and call me out. I'm open for that. I don't want you to feel that the person who's conducting the workshop, whether it's me or Manpreet, we know everything. This is a work which is based on last year and a half of all the books, all the text we read, we created notes, and this is what we are presenting to you. And this workshop is designed for 12th pass students or adults. The reason for that is that some of the books or stories that we'll be discussing later on, when we deep dive into some of the genres, they are related to murder or violence or gun violence or historical events that may or may not be suitable for the school students. However, I had been talking to Anu, and we might create uh, a workshop in April or May during summer vacation, which will be suitable for the school student. So if we have any participants who are less than 16 years of age, I request you to check with your parents if you can attend this workshop or not. I already mentioned about copyright issues. One thing you need is a notebook, a pen, or a pencil, not just to complete the exercises, but also to note down your ideas if and when they pop up. Like I mentioned, the mistakes, the critique, the feedback. For any queries, suggestions, and feedback, either write to the Digital Nalanda team or to this email ID stories.n.doodles@gmail.com or storiesanddoodles@gmail.com. Palash, your question is, does this course contain anything about content writing? Palash, content writing is very specific. I remember last time, a year and so ago, when I was talking about the CV preparation workshop, even at that time, the SOPs, the statement of purposes and cover letters, such documents, they're very specialized. So this will not cover content writing as a subject. However, I will be covering some of the advertising campaigns because a lot of advertising, a lot of changes in our society, a lot of uh, videos, movies, series, and books, they do follow how our society, the changes in the society. So uh, it might help you, but it's not a targeted content writing workshop. I hope I have answered your question, and thank you for asking. Okay. Any other question? Okay. So this is our 8-week program. The first week, today and tomorrow, I'll be covering story formats. Uh, what kind of stories do we consume as a content? How does it impact us? What are the different ways of showcasing your story? What can be done? We'll go from small short stories from our childhood to some of the advanced ad campaigns. In the second week, we'll talk about frameworks. So different authors, different story coaches, they have a different kind of framework that help that will help us to structure our story to ensure that we are following some of the rules that are required. And after each framework, there will be always a line, break as many rules as you can. So it depends on your audience, how mature your audience is, depends on how much risk you are willing to take with your story. So we'll talk about frameworks in week 2. Week 3, we will have a lot of writing exercises, and it's possible that in week 2 and week 3, we will combine some of these exercises. Now, the reason for writing exercises is first it is that we need to uh, share our ideas within the team. If you want to form groups within the participants, I'm happy uh, that you do so. Otherwise, you can share the stories in open forum. You can call me out saying that if you're fine with me putting your story on the screen for the review of the participants. So that is the first thing. Second thing is we need to improve because uh, nowadays we actually consume a lot of video content, but when you're writing, you need to create that image, you need to create that emotion in your reader's mind. So it's important for us to uh, undergo some of these writing exercises. Excuse me. We have a separate weekend for characters because characters form the core of your story. Character is something that your audience likes or dislikes, relates to. So there are certain rules on writing the characters. I will be adding some of the concepts from business also. And when I say business, these are some of the tests that our HR teams use nowadays to identify what kind of person the employees are going to be. Or and see, none of these studies, none of these forms give us the right answer. and the characters, they change over the story. So characters will have separate 2 days. There'll be n number of workshops. We'll twist the characters. We'll literally and figuratively torture them so that they show us what they are made of. And this is what your audience wants. And from weeks 5 to 8, we will be covering each genre. So these are the genres that I have prepared as of now, and I'll cover some of these in tomorrow's session. However, if you would like some other genres to be covered, wait till tomorrow's lecture, and then you can provide the feedback. So on detective thrillers, we will examine uh, some famous detectives and some rare detectives with a completely different mindset. We'll understand what kind of social or political situations are there for the detectives, how the detective is solving the cases. Similarly, crime thrillers, suspense thrillers, adventure and superhumans, uh, superhero genre, at least for last 10, 15 years, is dominant across our media. So we'll be covering superhuman. Adventure is to do with the journey and adventure. So what will happen is most of our stories are mix of these things, but these frameworks, these charts or characters can help you in how to organize your story. Then fantasy worlds, it will be more to do with fantasy, magic, then historic fiction. Excuse me. Historic fiction is something uh, which we see on our televisions in form of series. However, a lot of business leaders, at least in the literature I have been reading, they normally refer to a lot of war or military history. So I found that historic fiction is something which can help all of us, not just in the story writing part, but overall. How can we address, or how can we create situations and address or engage our audience with interest throughout our book or story? And the last genre I'm keeping is sports and science fiction. So they're not together. You can create one. Sports, again, given the ecosystem in India related to sports and globally, that is something which is growing enormously, as well as the storytelling part. I mean, you see just before any cricket or hockey series, and I hope you guys watched the Hockey World Cup this last month. So we get to know the stories of the players. Uh, a lot of new leagues are entering India, new sports. When I say new sports, some of them are old, Coco. Uh, some of the kids may not know about that. So how can we use those things and create some stories for our audience? And then science fiction. Science fiction can be part of historic fiction, adventure, superhuman. However, we will break it up and see the different components, how you can pick up some of your, I'll say, science aspect. So, for example, if you are a botanist, if you are a commerce student, if you are a physics or a chemistry student, can you bring your expertise and create a science story? So these are the core, or I'll say, 8 aspects that I have uh, planned for. However, tomorrow I'll share the list. A lot of stories, they don't have one subplot, although they have one core plot which goes on, but your subplots can be uh, any of these genres. So nowadays it's very difficult to get, or I'll say, tag any story or a book to one specific genre. Definitely drama is there everywhere. A lot of people add comedy or satire also. So before we begin, Any questions that you would like me to address? Please go ahead. Ask. Okay. Either it's too good, too bad. Time will tell. So we start with the first day, first workshop, story formats. So now the question is, why are humans the most dominant species on Earth? I couldn't write on Earth, otherwise it was just going offline. So this is a question for you. Anybody who can answer that? There are different reasons, different scientists, different anthropologists, different sociologists have given us different reasons, but I'd like to get your point of view. Can you guys share answer to this question? Why are humans the most dominant species? And the reason I question ask, okay, we have Palash saying we are more evolved. So I'll give you some of the knots. We are not the fastest, we are not the strongest, we are not the heaviest or lightest, we are not the biggest or the smallest, we are not with any superpowers, we cannot fly, and we cannot breathe in the water as our living schedule says. Modish has mentioned language, think, develop brain from Renuka. Palak said we are more evolved, capability to think, to act. So far, thinking is something which is common. So before we get into more debate, I'll go next. Yeah. So I know some of the points that you have mentioned. Yes, communication shake. Yes, it was mentioned earlier also. First is communication. See, the importance of communication is not about talking to each other. However, imagine humans when we were in early stages of evolution and we are competing against uh, animals that are faster, stronger, and fiercer than us. But we need our group to communicate. We need to understand that if one of the persons attacks from the front, the others are holding the spears and attack the animal from the sides or from the back. So communication, teamwork is important. Future planning, we need to see the impact on the future, how far we can, or how far ahead we can think of. And one of a very good argument that I read was even a predator chasing a prey, they are also planning for future. If a cheetah is chasing a deer, I don't want to say tiger because that can be misconstrued. Uh, uh, a tiger chasing a black buck. So a cheetah chasing a deer. Cheetah knows that I have to run fast for next 10, 20, 30 seconds and I need to follow the deer on a certain path. So cheetah is also thinking about future. Same way a lion is hiding under the bushes because the lion knows that when I'm crawling, or a lioness, uh, when he or she or it is crawling towards the prey must not be able to see or hear or sense the predator. However, that is a very short term planning in the long line time space. And that's why I had mentioned we can plan for long term. Learning and thinking. So, thinking is important, but as a community, as a society, if we need to grow, we need to learn also from each other. We need to educate also. Creating, innovating, and making tools. Opposable thumbs ensure that within our same peer group, I'm sorry, of chimpanzees or gorillas, we were able to use the opposable thumbs to make tools that helped us, that actually created the farming civilizations. We could control fire. We could domesticate animals. The other animals don't domesticate others. We do have some examples of symbiotic relationships, but domestication is something which only humans could do and do. We do that right now. Now, the advantage is that we can actually utilize their capabilities for our benefits. We can use a watchdog so that we don't have to be up at night. We use elephants to move heavy load where we cannot make roads. Similarly, other we use pigeons for communication. Another part, utilization or exploiting resources, and then adapt. I think adapting, or I'll say, excuse me, how we change ourselves as the environment around us changes, that gives us an advantage. And we'll see a lot of uh, business schools, a lot of studies, a lot of books. They talk about one or more of these components for any competitive landscape. And the reason I'm covering this is just to tell you that we are creatures of habit. We are designed to engage with story. I need to train my next generation so that they know of the dangers around them. And we are creatures of habit, not a creature 3D movie. I know you guys are, most of you are too young to know about that movie. It's an IMDb rating 3.2. You guys have enough time to kill. You guys can watch it and do a uh, movie study on that. But overall, the reason we are designed to engage with stories is our brain reacts to stories better rather than data, to visual cues. That's why a lot of people they say that they actually enjoyed the book more than the movie, because in book your brain actually puts you in that situation. You are understanding the character or the dangers. Now, as we are creatures of habit, let's look at the ecosystem around us. Cinema, plays, and TV shows, advertisements, product reviews. Even if you look at the YouTube thumbnails, they are also giving us some kind of emotional state of the video. And we are intrigued that, okay, we would like to know what this person has to say. Astronomical rise of social media content and high paid influencer. We want to know what the influencer is talking about. We want to know what our friends are doing. What's the story behind? Can they make that story? Uh, I think most of the tools they are telling us, okay, this is what you did. Would you like to share the story on your feed, on your Facebook? Songs, art, music, traditional forms of expression or representation, books, magazines. And another thing that I have noticed, at least in the last 3, 4 years after COVID, is that how the regional and global audience and shows are being accepted, even the channels across the globe. I mean, a lot of Korean series, Japanese anime, even within India, a lot of movies or stories are being remade with a different twist. And at last, religions, sorry, case studies in education, in business, we are not given a simple Excel sheet. Most of the big schools, when they try to teach us a business scenario, they try to make a story. This is the competitive landscape. These are the resources you are having. What kind of decisions you'll make? What kind of impact it will have on the company, on the customer? So uh, that's one part. The second part is, even when the last 5 or 8 years, the data scientist or AI jobs were increasing, we still had books like Storytelling with Data. How can you tell your story better as a data scientist? Because we have to convince our audience that this particular tool is better for you. And this is above and beyond sales. And at the end, religions, or whatever doctrine or whatever rules the religions want us to follow, most of them they'll have a reference or a study, and it will be related to the societal setting, to the to the timeline or the setup, social setup of the time, but the focus will be on the learning. And there'll be numerous other examples. I'm not saying this is the only list. Now, what is a story? So this is a definition from Google. Being a lazy person that I am, I just copied the first two sentences. Now, it's an account of imaginary or real people. So it may or may not be real. And events told for entertainment. We'll assume that statement as of now. And then it's an account of past events in someone's life or in the development of something. Now, if we extend the entertainment, we can also say learning. If we say past events in someone's life or development of something, that can be something related to a biography or a motivational story. I mean, we have some random people who are trying to motivate some people with some kind of crappy stories on YouTube. So, and the reason I say that, this is the trend. This is what your audience is used to in last 10 years. So you have to be aware of that. You may or may not think like that, but this is your competition. I think 3 or 4 years ago, the CEO of Netflix, Reed Hastings, he was asked in a conference, in an investor conference, that who's our biggest competitor. And can someone tell me what was his answer? Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, when asked about who's his biggest competitor. At that time, Disney was investing money, Amazon was investing money in streaming services, but Netflix was still ruling the room. And his answer was sleep. Thanks, Renuka. I wish he would have said that. But his answer was sleep. And now this is the, I'm sorry. This is the level of, I'll say, analysis they're having. We need to know that because these are the habits of my audience. Until unless a person is actually interested in book. Oh, Modish, you didn't get the answer. Give me 1 minute. Just say the answer. Oh, sorry. Give me 1 minute, guys. I was actually. I hope everyone can see the answer. The answer was sleep, need. Now, we need to understand our audience. At the end of the day, whatever your story is, whatever the value or the change you want to create, your audience has to invest into your book or your story. And we have other competitors that are competing for the same time and same money in a pure business sense. So it is a communication tool. However, the reader knows it's a make-believe or a fiction. That is a lie. So if you are a fiction writer, you know you are selling a lie. But is your lie believable? And this is a challenge. I mean, how we are making up a story, and we'll see, like in a gossip person or in Hindi or Punjabi, we have the terms like kapodi, fukra. I mean, these are the people who will tell us tales which we know are not true, but just for entertainment value, we'll listen to them. I hope we still do. And we know they are lying, but we just sometimes want to see how far the person is going to extend that story when we interrupt. So the different forms of learning and entertainment which take tips from story. First is the text. So this is the form. This is not a genre right now. So our books, newspapers, magazines, ads, in the text form also, how they generate that emotion so that we read about that, we inquire about that, we engage with the brand. Audio, songs, music, social gathering, folk tales. So most of the stories were actually told vocally for a long period of time. Writing or printing is pretty recent in our human civilization. So that's why you'll have a lot of people who actually undergo presentation skills or voice modulation training so that they can manage the stage or they can convince the audience. And on the other side, you'll see a lot of ads. The way they talk, the way they use their voice, it's pretty similar, be it India, be it outside India. The voice type, the voice annotations, they're still relatable. Visual, one of the, I'll say, best mediums or forms to which our brain responds. The same thing in text and the same thing in picture. Our brain reacts to the picture 10,000 times better. And in one of the books that we had written, we need to be careful about that because there's a quote that a picture is worth 1,000 words. But if your picture is not relevant, imagine the confusion those irrelevant 1,000 words will cause. So that is why many a times you will just simply feel like, okay, this thing is out of place. So imagery, videos, drawings, art, animation, colors, even comics, I can put that. So comics or graphic novels, whatever your local name is for that. And then we have combination. We have performances, we have movies, we have role plays and games. Games also use some kind of storytelling. You are given a mission. You are either dropped in a war zone or you have to just run across the city. So a lot of game, they use a specific story. Any other aspect that you think is related to story that I have missed? I would request you guys to share. So that is, I'll just take a minute's pause. Any questions, any suggestions that we have till now? I request you guys to share now. And just give me one moment. I'll just get some water. I'll be on mute, but please, any messages on the chat, give me just 1 minute. Thank you for your patience, guys. So let's jump. There are no comments or questions, so we'll just jump to our next section. So here we'll just pick up some simple stories and try to analyze those. So do you remember the story of monkey with and two cats? So to simplify that in 3 sentences, the two cats who find a loaf of bread and start fighting over it. Monkey offers help by dividing the bread into two pieces. Then goes on to say, okay, the one piece is bigger than the other one, so let me take a bite, then the other one, and finally finishes the bread and goes off. And the moral of the story is trust your friends, danger, danger. If you are fighting, other people can take advantage of you, share with each other. Any other moral or learning you have from that story, or if you don't remember the story, please share. Okay, nothing. I think the story is too old. Now, let's see if I have to emphasize the importance of moral aspects or the learnings to create a better emotional response from my audience. I can present the two cats as brothers or sisters or longtime friends. I can showcase their emotional state and a physical state that they were hungry for last couple of days, and then they find a loaf of bread. As an author, you need to even question where did the bread come from. I mean, we know that there is no, unless cats have started using mobiles, they are not ordering the bread, right? So where did they find that loaf of bread? Is that a regular occurrence, or did that just happen once? Why did it happen? What was the situation? Did it fall from a person who was being chased by someone who got scared, or did it fall from uh, a vehicle that delivers bread? So, as an author, you even need to go to that detail. Where does the monkey come from? Because the cats are friendly, they know each other. Monkey is a stranger or an outsider, or maybe a person who is not part of their regular friend circle. So, how do you introduce monkey to the system? And one option is monkey is an old enemy. So we simply say, okay, they might be one point of time they had a fight. Now, if that's the case, you need to give me some, or when I say me, you need to give the audience some justification. Other word is monkey is a psychopath. He uses kind words or flowery language and tries to convince them that I'm doing the right thing. Now, one other important aspect is that the cats realize what monkey is doing, but they don't call out the monkey. So you have to showcase that the fight between two cats has been so fierce, or they hate each other so much at that point of time that they just don't want the other one to get the bigger piece. Remember, they're hungry. Remember, both of them can use it. And uh, there are some of the case studies in organizational behavior in which multiple teams are actually supposed to compete with each other, and they try to take away points from other teams. But at the end of the exercise, then you realize that if those teams would have cooperated, they would have actually gained more than the single winning team. So the problem is defined in such a way that the teams actually never think that they could have cooperated. The moment the competition starts, we feel like we are competing against the other person, and I can gain only by inflicting some loss or damage on the other team or teams or my competitors. Now, this is the key. I mean, if you analyze this story, after first or second bite, the cats do realize that the overall size of the pie or the bread is reducing, right? So, why are the cats not taking away the bread now? Other part is, why can't monkey just take the bread and run onto the tree? The cats can chase, but monkeys can do better, right? They live most of their life on the trees, or they can climb higher. So there are many aspects, and the reason we are doing this is we will be analyzing a lot of such short stories so that we as a writer or as an author understand that I need to address such questions for my audience during the timeline of the story. Again, I'll stop. Any questions, and you would like to speak in favor of monkey or the cats? Suddenly the participation has dropped, even though India has gotten one wicket. So I don't know if the cricket matches are still on the other screen or on the mobile. Okay. So any questions on analysis of this story? Because Similar analysis will be part of your assignment. We need to understand, and the reason we need to understand is our behavior, our habits. Some of them are similar, some of them are changing with the time. So we need to understand the audience. The better we understand, the more relevant our writing will be. Okay. So now we get to the some other examples there. I had. I hope this document will be shared by all of you. Sapna, please share that. And these are some of the small stories like Bell the cat, uh, Lions and Mouse, Thirsty Crow, Fox and Goat, Farmers and his sons. Now we know these are all make believe. Yeah, one point that I missed. See, we know the cats and monkey. They are not going to have a discussion over the dinner table and say, okay, this is big one, this is small one. Why don't I measure this one, right? So this is make believe. This is a lie. But our purpose is to teach the kids or our audience what and why and how and when to understand the situation and take the right decision. So, Bell the cat will actually discuss this tomorrow. Lion and mouse help each other. Maybe the person will help you later. Thirsty crow, use your mind, solve the problem. Actually, there are bigger. I mean, just try it out. Actually, it doesn't work, but uh, a raven, which looks like crow, is considered one of the most intelligent birds. It can actually create tools. It can bend a wire to get the worms out of a wooden trunk. So whosoever made that story actually knew that ravens are pretty intelligent. That's again my assumption. But overall, ravens are considered one of the most intelligent birds. Uh, Fox and the goat. Fox are still considered creatures that or animals, wolves or foxes that adapt very well. They're cunning. They can exploit the situation. Goat, uh, apart from their utility as a goat cheese or lamb, they are mutton. So uh, when we talk about goats, now greatest of all time has been used pretty frequently. But there is nothing special about these animals. So we are just showcasing a regular person or sheep, like people who are or lambs who just follow the regular uh, regular flow. I mean, they're not questioning, they're not asking where are we going. Then farmer and his sons, there are two stories actually. One is about the sticks, about if you're all together, nobody can break you. The second one is the farmer on his dying bed says that I actually don't know which one it is. So the second one is in which the farmer says before dying that I had hidden some treasure in one part of the field, but I don't know where it is. And the sons actually end up digging the whole field, and then this is actually the sowing season, so they end up having a really good harvest because of their uh, effort. So different stories, different models, but all of them form of learning. Okay, any questions? Some these are all simple stories. You can actually find them. Any question right now? I will not proceed unless there are two questions. So if you guys are not asking, I'll have to force you because this is the day one. Unless we engage, unless we have discussions like we are not learning from each other. Thanks, Palash. I'll give that as one. Can someone else just say no so that I know you guys are still there? Okay. Thanks, Lakeet. Okay. Now we look at the components of story. Thanks, Renuka. Components of story. First is characters, who are, or whatever your characters are, they are driven by their emotion. Uh, as and when your story progresses, their emotions change. They have certain fears, they have certain ambitions, they may or may not have some powers. When I say power, I don't talk about mutants, or I don't talk about superheroes. I'm just saying what kind of abilities they are having. And it all changes. Most of these things will change as your story progresses. Tomorrow, when we talk, sorry, next week, when we talk about the framework, we'll see how we can manage that, how we can uh, picture that or create the overall mapping of the story. Second component is events. Now, events can be positive or negative, because, see, a regular daily routine is not an event. If I go to a restaurant, I order something, I'm served within time, I finish my food, I pay my bill, I come back home. That's not a story, right? That's a regular event. There's nothing to learn, there's no form of entertainment. Uh, so, how do you create the situations? How do you twist some of the situations? And it's possible while going or while returning, going to the restaurant, returning, or during some other event, I might get an idea. Hey, that person, or I just noticed something. Some people, they are doing some funny things around. A person who's trying to uh, go really fast, overtake a bus, brakes pretty hard. There's an accident. People are blocking ambulances, which is a pretty common sight, at least in Bangalore. So, how can you pick that up, and how can you create a story so that your audience or your near and dear ones can learn from that? If I see somebody falling from a cycle because of the mistake by the rider, I'll probably teach my kids not to do that, right? Or to be careful. Now, the way I tell the story, I might exaggerate the injuries, I might exaggerate the risk, and I might involve myself. I mean, it might be happening on the other side of the road, but I might say, okay, I braked so hard I could have hit that person. And I think my car touched or brushed the two-wheeler in front of. So, how do you change a situation to create something that can be? Events can be challenging. Events should uh, test your character in some of the story genres. We will work on that. That how can it become more challenging for your characters? And the best example there is Mission Impossible movies. In any of the movies, you'll always see they will first describe, okay, if the event A doesn't happen, event B is completely impossible. I mean, it's so secure. They have 24 by 7 security, they have robots guarding, they have missiles, they have guns and everything. But after 15 minutes, option A is off the table and you have to go for option B. So whatever dangers you explained earlier, now you have to go through or face those dangers or challenges. Irrespective of the positive, negative, or challenging event, it must move the story forward. Now, a challenge may push your character back, but the story goes forward because the next event becomes difficult. So the audience must feel, okay, now this person is facing a challenging event and the previous event was negative. Is my main character, or is the person I'm engaging with, ready for the next challenge? Because unless your audience gets into that emotional state, they may or may not read it further. Excuse me. Okay, so events. That's why we're trying to break it up so that we focus on these things when we start our writing it. Objects. Objects, importance of the objects. Uh, Most of the movies, something gets stolen, something is created, something is missing. So, what kind of objects are there? It will depend on the genre. In case of, okay, Palash is sharing. I don't know which stories are you reading, Palash, bro. So, so objects, are the objects scarce? Sorry, it can be scary also. How valuable they are, how hard to get they are. So, and we'll have a complete list based on the genre. I mean, in case of detective, it can be the will of the person who's no longer alive. It can be a certain uh, clue which has been left and nobody notices, but the detective notices. So, a lot of important as well as unimportant. And the importance or otherwise is actually through the eyes of all the characters. As the author, you need to ensure that you showcase the object, whereas one party ignores that object and the detective acknowledges that object and then solves the overall problem based on that particular object. So that is why objects are really important. Places, places give you uh, I think first thing the places give you is what kind of setup you want to write. I mean, if I am from a specific state or my hometown is in Punjab, if I'm living in Chennai, Hyderabad, or Bangalore or NCR, so I would like to compare or find the commonalities, and then I'll try to find what is different, what are the differences, because that can be good starting point. What are the things that are similar? What are the things that are not similar? And I hope the weather is better in north part of India, but in Bangalore or in Hyderabad or Chennai, they're not. The winters are not that cold as compared to north. Then there's a very common joke on Twitter, right? So whenever someone from the southern states or from the coastal area say, "Oh, today it was 15 or 16," and somebody from north will say, "Oh, this is our March or this is our April weather. We are in single digits. We are less than 5." So these are the ideas. These ideas can give you subplots. Same way, opposite or contrasting. Opposite or contrasting is important because as an author, you need to acknowledge that I don't know anything and I have to do more research. So if I want to write on uh, the cuisine from the state of Andhra or the cuisine from state of Tamil Nadu, I know that there will be different areas which will have different kind of cuisines. I cannot generalize just because I ended up in a restaurant in a back city such as Bangalore or a city such as Chennai, right? So I need to put my effort into that. Same way within North, if I compare the food habits of people from Jammu and Kashmir with Himachal, with Punjab, with Rajasthan, with Haryana or New Delhi, it will all be different. And it will be different within the state. So can you find the contrasts within the states? I mean, some of the most common examples are the accents of the speakers. When you will have uh, a person who has a keen ear, and the person can actually differentiate between the accents of the characters and then realize, okay, this character is actually from north but pretending to be from south because he or she speaks some words in a different, or even within north, this person is from different area or different region. So that is why places are important. Then difficulty or ease, what kind of lifestyle is there? A person will have a different kind of lifestyle. It may be easy or difficult based on the situation you are in. A fisherman versus a person who's living in the forest or foothills of Himalayas will have completely different life. If you ask them what is easy, what is difficult, it's possible one person says what is easy, the other person might simply find it difficult. So we need to understand the places. Again, as I mentioned, what are the challenges related to what kind of lifestyle you are having, what kind of place you are living. Time, uh, time travel, I personally don't like it much. I haven't done much research on it. I don't have really good examples on time travel. So, continuing the laziness, I would request you to avoid time travel. However, I will still give you some list of the stories or movies which you can go through and you can learn about time travel. So, mostly the stories present is what are the different events happening at different times, different characters, how you can combine them. Future, what kind of impact one event will have on the future. Is it expected impact or unexpected? And again, does it make your character's life easy or difficult? So that's why uh, time is important. Past, and the reason I have given past and ancient is that what kind of timeline you are using. Uh, I think last 5 or 6 years ago there was a book. I will share the name when we get into that. But another you would have noticed in the series also nowadays there is a trend that you have two stories running in parallel. One storyline is actually happening in the past, the other storyline is happening in present, and there are times when an object which is uh, shared or introduced in the past actually shows up in your present timeline with the importance, and either people don't know about it or they're trying to find it out. So uh, past, present, future is a simple scope how your story is running. Ancient is if you want to write about a certain period, you must study, you must research what was happening during that time. But anyway, in fiction, you do have some kind of freedom. But again, I would love you guys to write something controversial, but I won't suggest it. Uh, I don't want Anoop to stop my sessions. So whatever timeline, historical fiction is a really good genre in which you can pick up some events and how you can twist them or how you can use some aspects. And one of the example is a lot of series, a lot of books that consider that Hitler never killed himself, and in one way or another he's there. Or I think in Inglorious Bastards he's actually killed. So in The Hunters, there's a series on Amazon. He's not killed. Then there is another one, The Man in the High Castle. In that book, uh, the Nazis actually win the uh, world war, and how America has been divided into two parts. So a lot of things you can do, but you'll have to research. I mean, you cannot say that okay, if 1945 country, or let's say Germany and Japan won, what was the difference? And Man in the High Tower is one of the best series to study that. And these examples will come in when we reach there. So remember that will be the starting point. If the aeroplane, and I'm just sharing with some examples, if the aeroplane design uh, is from 1945 onwards, right? So then the possibility is then you don't have Cold War. The possibility is you don't have the need for the space war, right? So how do you pick up from there and move forward? Because the starting point is there. You have changed the starting point. You cannot assume that there will be mobile technology in the same way it is today. What can you change in that? A lot of technology or science fiction still uh, takes ideas from Star Wars or Star Trek. So there are some references, but that doesn't mean you are being forced to use those references. The point is, how do you twist it? How do you bend the rules? And how do you create something new for your user? I mean, at the end of the book or end of the story, your audience must not think, okay, the person just picked it up. And I mean, for me, the best example is Kamal Hassan's movie Chachi 420. I mean, if you look at Mrs. Doubtfire, which is the original movie, and Chachi 420, Chachi 420 or Chachi 420 is such a good movie because it has all the intricacies of an Indian society. Mrs. Doubtfire, it is a good comic movie, but it addresses completely different set of, I'll say, principles and values. If you get time, watch both the movies. I'm not saying they're both time traveling, but just an example here. Set up which environment the story takes place. So, like Chachi Jatso is a good example. I'm glad I used that. Social, regional, what kind of social principles are there? Actually, I didn't mention legal. Legal is also one option, but legal system in India is completely different from other legal systems. So one such example I was going to share, I will share in detective genre is that if one of the persons or detectives or police person is accused and finally uh, charged by charged of tampering the evidence, all of his previous cases are re-examined. There are some rules like that. You have to see what kind of setup you are writing. I mean, the best or the worst example in India is CID. You will see random person at a random place looking at random thing, and the next thing he says, "Oh, what has happened? Let me call CID." I mean, how many of you are actually having CID's phone number, right? Let me call CID. They never follow a process. The police dramas in India. So you have to understand that. I hope you understand what I'm saying because see, your audience is now consuming global content. So you cannot have, oh, let me call CID, right? There's a process. A local police person will show up, may or may not. I mean, I don't even know that. And then how your case process is, who's the legal representative, which court that particular case will go to, what kind of tests or investigation will take place. There's so many things. So if you want to create a setup, always understand. Scientific setup, I mean, I only knew that Ghadi detergent and Colgate used to show those white coats on TV while doing research for washing powder or for toothpaste. So other than that, nowadays we have those white coats or labs everywhere in most of movies, medical dramas and all that. So how scientific are you? But if you're going science and personally, absolutely for science. The challenge is, can you question the ongoing present dogma of non-scientific approaches? And if you are going to do that, are you willing to take that risk? Okay, so be very careful when you're going for science. And the last is physical or geographical. I mean, this has become such a regular habit of a lot of people now. You'll find random person talking about a certain country. Okay, this is how Brazil population grew and all. I'm just giving you an example. And then you will see that people like you and I who don't know about Brazil, and I absolutely hope some of you know, they'll say, okay, like, or maybe download or retweet. But then you'll see 10 Brazilians calling it out that this is completely wrong. This is bullshit. This is set of lies. This is not even related to our community. This is not related to what Brazilians do, right? But that person, they want to do clickbait. So be very be aware of the physical and geographical traits of the setup that you are writing in. Okay, I mean, you cannot have the one example I share is if you look at the boats that were used by the Viking versus the boats that were used by uh, Dutch East India Company, they're both different because the purpose is different. See, Vikings are supposed to have fast ships because, or boats, because they are raiders. They have to come to your shore, uh, do their loot, fill in whatever they have, and then just run away. So speed is paramount there. And they have to select the ports which are not well guarded. But if you look at the ships or the shipping vessels from East India Company, that is where you have to ensure, and I was reading it in some place, that the lesser people required to manage the ship, the better for you, as well as, excuse me, the size of your ship. That how much goods can you transport in one trip? Okay, and if we continue the same thing, the war, the naval wars between Spain and England, they have different stories. If we look at the Roman times, the shipbuilding was to ensure that when they are importing grains from Ethiopia, uh, the grains must not get humid. So the design was like that. So if you just pick up one item based on the setup, the whole story changes. You cannot have, I mean, Vikings are not going to transport or trade stuff. They're going to raid and come back. East India Company, when it was established, they had a different setup or timeline, and their purpose was different. Same way when Spanish and British navies were fighting in the water, they had to outdo each other. So the designs of the ships was different. And I'll be sharing a lot of links on such historic series. They're all YouTube. It's not content is already being created and shared by others. Okay, so you have to be very careful about the setup. Now, the biggest question, the two whys in your stories. In case you guys didn't get the pun, these two whys are uh, bold. So the first why is, why should your audience read your story? Remember, if Netflix is competing against the sleep, I already showed you your competitor. So think of yourself as a reader. What kind of books, or within your groups, what kind of books or stories people are interested in? Be objective because everyone thinks they have an excellent idea. Okay, so be ruthless in your own review. Talk to your friends, talk to your mentors, and see, you don't need yes men or people who say, okay, this is excellent story. You need people who tell you, okay, this is stretching too much. I mean, I don't think it has ever happened. But is this story that a large number of people would be willing to do? So the question, the second why is, why will the reader invest money, time, and effort into your story? So first is a simple reading the story. You've been given a book. Is your story, this is the quality of the story to start with. The second thing is, what is the reader getting out of your book, out of your story? And remember, I'm not saying your story is not important. Your story is important. So you must package it in the way the audience wants. And the biggest example is calling out the fake narratives. Like I mentioned earlier, on Twitter, you have a lot of fake narratives. And we see a lot of social issues such as systematic racism or casteism not being addressed across the literature for years. I mean, if you, excuse me, if you just read the literature from Booker T, if we read literature of, or talks of Malcolm X or other African American social scientists, I would say, they actually talk about certain issues in a completely different way as compared to the, uh, I'll say, the privileged class or the people who have power, be it social privilege or financial privilege, and in any setup. Similarly, in India, casteism, if you feel that your story is not being heard, or most of the times, the narrator, the reporter, or the author of the story may or may not acknowledge own privilege, and they will only provide you a viewpoint of what they think is happening to the other person. They don't understand the gravity of the situation. And it's not just these two issues. Same is applicable for sexism. I mean, the feminist movement right now, it has ups and downs. Accessibility, people who are having physical challenges. So if I just sit on a wheelchair and I say, okay, I can design a really good ramp which will help other people, I need to understand their point of view. I should be open to that feedback. So my point is, your story is important, but package it the way your audience wants. I'm not discouraging you. I'm just telling you how to make an impact. And it should not be a fake narrative in a way. It should be believable to a certain extent. Not everything we do in our life is worth mentioning, right? So what do we get out of it? And like I mentioned in the beginning, the purpose is we help each other by sharing and reviewing our story, ideas, and plots. So be respectful, be open to new ideas, be open to critique. Because if you are not accepting the critique of your fellow readers, I mean, very simple question is, do you have 10 people who are willing to put money to buy your book, or 10 people who actually work with you when you are still writing the story and give you the feedback? I would prefer the second group, because I know then my product or my story or my output will be far better. The first step, okay, you sell 10 copies of your book. So be very open. And this is one slide I wanted to showcase. This is the changing trends of our society. So via ads. And I'm just taking a couple of examples. One of the examples is the toothpaste, right? So in the 80s, the advertisements were, uh, rather than coal or other harmful things, we should use lal manjan or toothpaste, right? So the ads were like that. In 90s, after liberalization, we had a flood of new products. So now it's which paste is better for you. It's youth versus family. Okay, it gives you a fresh feeling. It takes care of your health. In 2000s, it was premium. Like there are different variants of and flavors of toothpaste. I mean, there was actually nowadays this is what news channels are doing, but there used to be a ad in which the reporters are actually dashing through your door and asking you, "Aapke toothpaste mein namak hai?" and all that, right? But nowadays that is the norm, right? So I don't know whether it was satire or it was like ahead of the time thinking, but it was different variants, flavors of paste. Okay, like, see, I have to tell you that this one is not right. You need flavor, you need different variant, because I have to sell the premiumness of my product. And in 2010s, it's more like social media. Okay, is your smile worthy of your Insta? Is your luxurious lifestyle? Are you showing off? Then expertise. I mean, the best example of expertise is Sensodyne. Sensodyne, it's both expertise and personalized. So two things Sensodyne did was, first was it actually gave you a person in a white coat. Oh, I'm a dentist. I advise this. Like, well, okay, but what is the impact? And the second thing was individual story of the consumer, that now when I eat ice cream, I don't feel that tingling situation, sorry, sensation in my mouth and like, right? So they personalized it for you. That was not happening in 2010. So we are looking at current trends is personalized story versus pure data points. And secondly, herd mentality versus unique person. So I don't want you to be part of herd, right? And another example is in ongoing cricket series, you would see Mahindra XUV 400 electric vehicle versus Tata's Nexon. Mahindra is giving you stories. There is one young girl who says, "Okay, I can easily. I'm not worried even when I'm in the city traffic because there are so many facilities in the car." The other story is this young chap who's watching the TV and he had to rush and pick up uh, his lady friend, and he's like, "Okay, this is the fastest SUV and all that." But if you look at Nexon's ad, Nexon is just throwing data at you. Oh, we have sold so many cars. And both of them are making the cars go fast on the road. But the first two are personalized. And Nexon is just giving you data pointers. It's not, and whatever is the price difference, whatever is the difference in the features, and whatever is your preference at the end of the day, you might go to both the car or both the showrooms, and then it's the person or the I'll say what kind of importance you're given by the sales team. But as a consumer sitting in your home, you have been given two stories. One is personalized, the other one is very generic. And these are the trends. This is what's happening online. This is what your audience is used to. So know that. Any questions till now? I know we have only touched the surface, scratched the surface in case of the story. Today's and tomorrow's section, excuse me, are very generic. Will not be jumping into the frameworks. There will be some assignments. So this is the summary of today's session. How do we define story? Why we as humans we are accustomed. I mean, we are used to that. So we are creatures of habit, not creature 3D. What are different components of story? And it might be when we write, and some are called. See, it's because I have a reference to compare to. Now, if I watch movie, right? I mean, a recent super hit movie, I won't name it. But if you see all the plots, each and every single event from that movie has been copied from Mission Impossible and James Bond movies. Each and every aspect, other than couple of songs in the movie, right? So, uh, but it's a hit, right? And uh, that's how it is. I cannot say that. And then the most important thing is your story is important. At any point of time, if I gave you an impression that your story is not important and you should not write, then I might have misrepresented or misspoken. Your story is important. No, no, Ashwini, when we will go into the specific genres, we will talk about structure. All I'm saying is that today, if you create a story about time travel and see the time traveler by H.G. Wells, I don't know the exact date, but it must be 100 or 120 years old, that book, right? But what changed in that book and today's stories about time travel? What changed? And I don't think that book, if I remember correctly, actually talks about space. It actually talks about visiting different worlds, and the person actually returns in such a short duration of time that his friends or his colleagues, they cannot believe what he's doing. However, nowadays space travel or time travel, I mean, if we look at Edge of Tomorrow, I don't know if you've seen the movie. So every time that main character dies, the time is reset to a certain time point. But this is kind of a military warfare movie. However, there is a comedy movie, an old one, Groundhog Day. I think Groundhog Day, if I'm not mistaken. In that one, a person wakes up every morning and it's the same day. Everyone around him is following a daily routine, but he is the person who knows what happened earlier. So there's the time is acting strange for that one person only. For others, it's going in a different direction or a different sequence. So even if you go with time travel or time machine, right? And if we look at Jules Verne, when he was writing or 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, that story explains how he and his crew members actually survive under the sea, and he will never set foot on land. But when we go to the Time Machine by H.G. Wells, he doesn't talk about the science related to uh, the actual building of time machine. He's not talking too much about physics, but Jules Verne is actually talking about a little bit about the mechanics, about the boilers, about how he's using a lot of stuff within the sea to ensure that he doesn't need to set foot on uh, land again. Okay. So filmy and all, see, I'll always compare whatever is being offered to me with whatever I'm consuming. I mean, if I come here and somebody tells me, okay, this is the best parantha, but I'll say, okay, the best parantha is in Punjab. But if I go to North, it's possible within Punjab, the 10 or 12 places I have been to, they have different versions. So I will always compare you with whatever standard I have set for myself or whatever the ongoing trends are. So to the assignment right now, please think about your three favorite stories. See if you can write concisely that story in one sentence. What happens in that? Three sentences and then 100 words. So it will help you in understanding the importance of the characters or the moral. List the various components of the story. And remember, all the components need not to be in all the stories. We will always pick and choose. We will always shuffle them. Like in just another example, in detective stories, some will build up the crime and then in the middle the crime will happen and then the detective will try to investigate. In others, the crime happens up front, audience knows about the crime, who did it, but the detective has to work and prove that the bad guy did it, right? So there'll be different things. We don't have to use all the components all the time, but you have to list down. You can mail them to storiesanddoodles@gmail.com, or you can WhatsApp to this phone number. And please mention digital Nalanda or story writing. I'm not tracking your attendance. I'm not tracking anything else. These are the background pictures that I have used. The thank you note. It's 5:29. We have 1 minute left. However, any questions, anything. Kajal, you can do whatever you want. I actually, I'm sorry. I don't want to give preference to any language, but you don't have to write in a language which you're not comfortable with. Okay, you can write in Hindi. You can work with someone. You can translate it later. You want to address the Hindi speaking or Hindi reading audience. Good for you. Target that. There is no restriction. And actually, as I mentioned earlier, global and local stories are the flavor right now. And the chances are, if you actually write a good Hindi story versus writing maybe a mediocre English story, that will actually be better to go with Hindi. And for that matter, any regional language, be it Punjabi, be it Tamil, be it Kannada. Okay, any questions? Any other questions? Right. Yeah, Renuka. So what we are going to do is in some of these workshops or some of these lessons, we are going to dissect and look at the components of the stories. The purpose is definitely to write our own story. The purpose is definitely we can either create short story book, use stories in our regular life, in business and personal life. Definitely, I'm not. I haven't done that much of research that I can tell you to write a movie script or a full dialogue, or sorry, full novel. But short stories, from 15 to 20 pages, that much components, how to, if you already have some ideas of plots or subplots, how can you polish that, how can you add on to that, how can you create uh, excitement for your readers, how can you engage the readers better, those tips will definitely be there part of genre. Because see, there is no single genre, right? Everything, every story has so many different components, and I will be sharing a lot of subplots also. And I think I have around 25 subplots from Dostoevsky's Brothers Karamazov. And they're not just related to drama, they're related to family, they're related to suspense, they're related to social setting. Okay. So these small plots can help you to revise or redesign your story if you feel like. Any other questions? Sapna, I hope we can go further a couple of minutes to address any questions. In any case, if you don't have any questions, you can always email or drop a message. We'll address. Tomorrow we will be covering a little bit more about genres, little bit about will how can we generate more ideas, twist some old existing stories and reformat them and use those components in our writing. So if there is nothing else, I wish you all a really good evening, and we'll talk again. Thank you very much. Adi Hondas. Sorry. Hello.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Job.
Nice.
Thank
Very
you,
nice.
ma'am. Okay, bye.
Okay, sir.